What if the greatest investor on Wall Street wasn't investing at all? For decades, one man delivered returns that seemed almost magical. Steady profits, no big losses, no drama, just quiet, reliable growth. Investors didn't just trust him. They trusted him with everything. Retirement savings, charities, university endowments, family fortunes built over generations. His name was Bernie Madoff, and what he built wasn't a portfolio. It was a lie. 50 years in the making. The man who looked like the system. Bernard Madoff didn't operate from the shadows. He helped build modern Wall Street. His firm, founded in 1960, became one of the pioneers of electronic trading. He served as chairman of NASDAQ. He advised regulators. He sat on boards. He donated millions to charities. He wasn't outside the system. He was inside it. And that distinction made all the difference. Fraud doesn't hide in the shadows. It hides in plain sight. Behind titles, behind donations, behind decades of handshakes. The perfect returns. Madoff didn't promise extraordinary gains. He promised consistency. 8 to 12% a year. Almost no losing months. Low volatility. Calm performance. In good markets and bad. In finance, that kind of smoothness is unnatural. Real markets fluctuate. Even the best strategies experience drawdowns. But Madoff's returns looked engineered to remove anxiety. And that was the product. Not performance. Comfort. The strategy that wasn't. He claimed to use a sophisticated option strategy known as a split strike conversion. It sounded like science. It was theater. Few investors fully understood it. Even fewer questioned it. Because when numbers look stable and a manager looks reputable, complexity becomes an excuse not to dig deeper. In reality, there were no consistent trades. No hidden genius. No secret formula. He was taking money from new investors and using it to pay old ones. A classic Ponzi scheme. At its peak, billions of dollars flowed through a single bank account. Statements were printed. Balances updated. Returns fabricated. The illusion required one thing: new money. And for decades, it kept arriving. The trust economy. Madoff didn't chase investors. Investors chased him. Access to his fund felt exclusive. You needed introductions, social connections, the right networks, Palm Beach retirees, hedge funds, charitable foundations, Jewish philanthropic organizations where Madoff was deeply embedded. When someone you've known for 20 years says they've invested with Bernie and never had a bad year, skepticism feels rude. Social proof replaced verification. And that substitution became the engine of the fraud. Trust moved faster than due diligence. It always does. The analyst who saw it. The warnings weren't invisible. In 1999, financial analyst Harry Markopolos submitted a detailed report to regulators. He argued that Madoff's returns were mathematically impossible. Not unlikely. Impossible. He sent updated versions in 2001, 2005, 2007. The SEC investigated and found nothing, partly because they lacked resources, partly because they lacked expertise, but partly because accusing a former NASDAQ chairman of fraud requires institutional courage. And institutions are not built for courage. They are built for procedure. And procedure, in this case, meant looking without seeing. The ecosystem around the lie. Madoff didn't operate in isolation. Around him, an entire ecosystem formed. Feeder funds collected billions and sent it his way, taking fees without asking questions. Banks processed transactions. Accountants signed documents. Lawyers handled paperwork. Everyone had a reason to keep moving. Nobody had a reason to stop. As long as the returns arrived, the questions stayed quiet. The fraud wasn't just sustained by one man's deception. It was sustained by everyone who chose comfort over curiosity. The collapse. Then came 2008. The global financial crisis triggered massive redemption requests. Investors wanted cash, all at once. But there was no portfolio to liquidate, no assets to sell, only the memory of money that had never existed. When the flow stopped, the structure collapsed instantly. Madoff confessed. His sons reported him. Within days, the illusion that had lasted nearly half a century was gone. The damage. The numbers were staggering. About $65 billion in reported account balances. Roughly $17 to $18 billion in real principal lost. But the human cost was worse. One investor, Thierry de la Villehutchet, had placed his clients' entire fortunes with Madoff. When a collapse was announced, he couldn't face them. He took his own life days later. He wasn't the only one destroyed, just one of the few whose story has a name. Retirees lost life savings. Charities shut down overnight. Endowments funding medical research disappeared. Communities fractured. Financial fraud doesn't just destroy money. It destroys certainty. And certainty is harder to rebuild. The sentence. In 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison. A symbolic number. A statement. He died in prison in 2021 at the age of 82. Billions were eventually clawed back through legal action. Many victims recovered part of their losses. Some recovered nothing. Those who had withdrawn money years earlier recovered more. Those who held on lost everything. Timing, not innocence, determined survival. The real fraud. Madoff stole money. But that wasn't the deepest crime. The deepest crime was the theft of belief. Belief that reputation equals integrity. Belief that regulators catch impossibilities. Belief that smooth returns mean intelligent management. He didn't promise fantasy. He promised calm. And calm is more seductive than greed. Because greed feels risky. Calm feels safe. The lesson that remains. Ponzi schemes don't thrive because people are foolish. They thrive because trust travels faster than truth. Reputation can take decades to build and seconds to weaponize. The warning signs were always there. Impossible consistency, opaque operations, exclusivity framed as privilege. Bernie Madoff didn't invent fraud. The numbers were always wrong. The world just preferred not to check. If you want to keep understanding how systems fail, like and subscribe. The next story is already waiting.